Welcome to Seeking Alpha's CEO Interviews. Quality of leadership is a decisive factor in stock performance, so we provide in-depth interviews with the best and brightest CEOs in the public markets. We publish limited excerpts from our interviews on social media platforms and the full interviews at seekingalpha.com and in the highly rated Seeking Alpha mobile app. To find the full interviews, open seekingalpha.com or the Seeking Alpha mobile app and search for the phrase CEO Interviews, or simply type a stock ticker into the search box. Marty, welcome to Seeking Alpha. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you on. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
So catch listeners, viewers up on what cbdMD, where it plays in the marketplace, retail. It's obvious that you guys are in the CBD field, but catch us up on the particulars of where exactly you play in that marketplace.
So we are probably, depending on how you look at it, either number one or number two most recognized CBD brand in the United States. By sales, we're number two, which, 2.5 years ago, we weren't even in the top 100. So we've had a pretty good growth trajectory. We're a New York Stock Exchange listed. We're the only listed CBD company in the country, pure play. We are about 75% direct to consumer, making us one of the largest direct to consumer CBD companies. And we have full scale manufacturing. We do all of our in-house, everything from marketing to customer service. We have our own facility that does all of our logistics and distribution. So we have quite an infrastructure, about 170 employees, and we're rapidly growing in a rapidly growing CBD industry.
The other thing, you guys have had another couple announcements that I was curious to ask you about. One, you had the SPAC with Adara that isn't, I feel like, getting a lot of attention, but I'm curious the relationship you have with that SPAC and what you're looking to do there, the investment that you have with them. And then also you have a new subsidiary with the Therapeutics. And I was wondering if you wanted to talk about a bit about what those two things bring to the broader cbdMD family.
Yeah, so those are great questions. So the SPAC was basically, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a veteran of public companies in Wall Street for about 30 years. And my investment banker came to me last summer and said, hey, Marty, we want to back you for $100 million to do a SPAC. And I said, guys, I'm pretty busy doing my daytime job here. And they said, no, that's really a great opportunity. You'd be great at doing it. So I went to my board and I said, look, there's this opportunity. I'm not going to do anything that's going to compete with cbdMD, but the opportunity is pretty significant. So cbdMD acted as one of the sponsors of it, which, if you understand the SPAC business, if everything works out well, is a very lucrative investment. And then, I'm the CEO of the SPAC, so that's kind of like how we overlap as an investor and also as a management. And we're just out there looking for great companies. We think we have a couple that could be very interesting. So stay tuned on that. Really, for cbdMD, it's a small financial investment that hopefully are going to, be able to get, great rewards to it. As far as cbdMD Therapeutics, now that's something that is, very interesting for a sort of a long-term play for cbdMD. As you look at the CBD industry, the therapeutic side of it, I like to say the CBD industry, the consumer goods side of the industry, we're kind of in the second inning, I would say, of this game. I think the therapeutics, we're not even in the first inning yet. We're still in batting practice to some extent, because what you see is CBD is one of the obviously most well-known and popular cannabinoids, but there are many, many others. And I think the idea behind cbdMD Therapeutics is we add other cannabinoids to our mixes, which make our mixes, proprietary. But studying those and studying, the effects of CBD itself is something that is fundamental to our view of being a science-based approach company, and providing health and wellness And so we, about a year or so ago, we had our regulatory counsel, Lance Blundell, kept saying, we need to do studies. We need to do studies. So we started doing them. And then really mid-year last year, we got very serious about it. And we hired Dr. Sybil Swift, who comes out of the FDA. And we beefed up our research and regulatory team. And now we've taken the step of creating the cbdMD Therapeutics division, which we're going to fund. And really, we have a view, kind of an 18 to 24 month view, and then beyond that, on the 18 to 24 month view, we'll be doing studies, in animal testing and those kind of things, and then beyond that, looking at human testing as to how these different cannabinoids function. And so it's a very interesting thing. Lots of times I'm over my head on this stuff because I'm not a scientist, but what it'll allow us to do is really provide greater transparency into what CBD does and what it can do, and then ultimately be able to make claims. That's the big thing. Right now, you can't make claims unless you have the study. So we're going to be deploying resources. We might actually take on partners in this, and we're very excited about it. I don't think anybody really, has given us a value of this, although I think the value is incredibly enormous. You look at what Epidiolex did, that is a value that GW Pharma did, that is incredible. So, we're gonna, we have a long-term approach on this. It's underway, and as we do more and be able to represent those studies, I think it's going to be very interesting because it all flows back into the products, right? The more science behind the products, the better your products are, the more your customers trust it, and it's it's a good circle. So that's the concept behind cbdMD Therapeutics.
So let me unpack that a little bit, starting with the SPAC. So first of all, who doesn't have time for a SPAC in the cannabis world, right? That's probably why they reached out to you. Everybody that's a good steward of capital has been approached, I feel like, about a SPAC in this world. Do you feel like, because I hear a lot that's the main thing in terms of looking at people with these SPACs as somebody that has a good track record, on the business fundamental side. Do you feel like that's why you were approached along with cbdMD? And also, how much do you have invested as cbdMD?
Yeah, so it's funny because if you look at cbdMD and you look at how that business became public, the business originally was called Level Brands. It was a company that I took public, and then I bought cbdMD in December of 2018 when the Farm Bill was signed. So if you think about it, I kind of had this public company with cash in it, and I put the cbdMD brand into it, which in a lot of ways is kind of what a SPAC does, right? And we took that brand from, as I said at the outset, we were probably not even in the top, at least in the top 50 brands, certainly by revenue in the CBD industry. Nobody knew who cbdMD was when we did the deal in December 2018, and here we are at the top. So I think we've done a really good job of executing and building and staying away from a lot of the landmines that a lot of our competitors, have kind of gotten trapped in. So the SPAC really, we're not going to do anything in the cannabis world in a SPAC because we're not going to compete with anything cbdMD does. It's really a financial investment. And, we put in, from cbdMD, we put in $1 million, and then management, myself and some of the other management team here put in additional capital as well. So, we'll wait and see how that SPAC, goes, what deal we end up doing, the ultimate success of that. But, we got a very good group that's kind of away from cbdMD that's involved in it, that are all, major players and having, tremendous experience in sort of the M&A, kind of SPAC world.
So is there a specific sector that you're looking at, or are you just looking at kind of a broad array of solid investments right now?
Yeah, look, we're looking for one company that we can put into the SPAC that has a great management team, and they could utilize we actually have 115 million in the escrow, can utilize 115 million dollars of the cash to grow their business, right? And we like kind of consumer brands. We like leadership teams that, obviously have a great track record, but also are kind of at the forefront of their particular industry, right? And we've looked already, we've been public for a couple months. We've looked at, gosh, the old saying is you got to kiss 100 frogs to find the prince. We've been kissing a lot of frogs. And hopefully we're getting, somewhere, that we can, find a great deal to put in there. But it's very across the board. We left this SPAC as a very generalist kind of concept. We didn't say, okay, this is going to be an oil and gas or a healthcare or whatever. We said we're going to keep this very general, which, plus the SPAC is on the lower end at 115 million. A lot of these SPACs are much bigger. So the combination of having a smaller SPAC, which means you can kind of do a middle range deal in that $300 to $500 million deal, and also have a generalist concept, has really opened up the amount of companies that we're looking at. So it's, it's exciting, and I think hopefully it'll be a good return for everybody. Certainly cbdMD.
And this is on the public markets. Did you say that?
Yeah, it's a public SPAC. It trades on the New York.
Okay. And in terms of the cbdMD Therapeutics, I think this is what a lot of companies are looking at in terms of this next iteration of the CBD world. And you talked about bringing, Dr. Sybil Swift on board from the FDA. And I think a huge obstacle to companies' growth is, aside from, there's a bit of an oversaturation in the market. But if you're talking about a top player like yourselves, I think one of the things that is a real hurdle is the FDA and getting through these regulations. How frustrating of an experience has it been to get to this point? And then how much does Dr. Sybil Swift coming on board help you? And what kind of advice is there being given and talked about in terms of best kind of solving the riddle that is the regulatory side of things?
Yeah, so I would say, let me answer the second one first. If you ever get a chance to talk to, Sybil, and I do, she's right down the hall from me. I was with her this morning. I realized how little I know about, the whole science and everything. She's so far beyond, it's incredible. She's so smart and talented, and we're just so fortunate that she's with us. And it really shows you, goes back to my point of, what inning are we in? And we might still be in batting practice, right? There's so much to discover with this incredible, really opportunity we have, and how you go about doing that, and having the resources to do it. And what do you do with it, is the real question. And so we've been fortunate that we have this very powerful brand that's growing like crazy and gathering customers, and those customers are, looking for a healthy alternative that isn't a medication that you don't get addicted on, that you can't OD on, that's going to help your overall health and wellness. And so how do we work within the confines of, what's out there in the regulatory world to try to, push this, down the road? To go to your first part of the question about being frustrated, it's interesting. You can look at this two ways. My partner, Scott Kaufman, says, you know what? I wish the FDA would, let this muddy, because it's, kind of this cloud of regulatory, let it stay on there for as long as they want. And you say, why, Scott? And he says, well, because that keeps all the big guys out and gives us an ability to really go grab market share, right? I mean, think about it. We've gone from 2 years to a no name to really the number one or number two recognized brand in the US, and squarely number two, and hopefully catching number one in as far as sales are concerned. You can't do that if the market has a huge bunch of big players in there, right? So we've kind of built this moat to some extent around us and the way we've done it. So Scott believes that, hey, that's that's great. The flip side to that is the avenues where you can sell the product are not available. For instance, big box isn't really available. They say they are, but they're really not, right? They might carry a couple topicals, but for us, topicals, that's like number 11 on our bestseller list, right? So imagine going into the big box folks and saying, carry our products, but start with our 11th bestseller, right? It's not really the best, it's generally not done, right? So, getting some clarity and some comfort is ultimately going to open that up, right? Meanwhile, our core competency is our direct to consumer, and we really are a tremendous online marketing organization, and Scott, my partner, is probably one of the best online marketing guys I've ever met in my life. So, our ability to grow and scale that side of the business is, really plays into our hands. It's one of the reasons that we grew 77% in a pandemic year last year, while everybody else in the industry, I think, shrunk. And so we were able to leapfrog everybody, and hopefully we'll see that continuing this year. So there's a plus and a minus to it. Obviously, we want to get into the big box players. We think that's coming. Remember, the clarity can be solved two ways. It can either be solved through the FDA or it can be solved through legislation. And we're working on the legislative side of it, which is, which I think, is one route to go. So we'll see. I mean, I think, a year for lots happened in the last year. The other thing that's interesting is the whole cannabis, THC side of the business as well. If that becomes, call it federally elite, if it becomes decriminalized, which is kind of like what happened with CBD, if you think about it. CBD, everybody was worried about the three-letter words DEA. FDA, yeah, sure, but DEA is something you definitely can't mess with, right? But now, if they take it off of the list, then I think THC becomes something that is, becomes more, popular and widely available. And then I think it's going to be, kind of, I think, hard for the big retailers to say, okay, well, we'll carry THC, but we're not going to carry cbdMD gummies, right? That doesn't make any sense. So we're kind of drafting off that a little bit too, as far as we push ahead. So we'll see. I think the next year is going to be very interesting.
And do you feel like, you talk about legislation and, lobbying for different legislation. Do you feel like that's based on what you were talking about with cbdMD Therapeutics, like the efficacy and the science and the data? Do you feel like that's the inherent missing part of it as we stand now, or do you think it's something else as well?
Well, I think the two are a little bit different, but the one certainly helps the other, right? To the extent we have studies where we can say, look, we've run these studies and look at what it does. It's proven to do this, this, and this. That certainly helps, push the ball along, from the regulatory side. So one kind of goes hand in hand, but, look, I think that, ultimately, the regulatory cloud under CBD is going to lift, right? It's just a question of who does it and what form it comes in and how fast that happens. If the work we're doing helps in that process, then that's a great thing for us and for the overall industry and for the customers.
And talk a little bit as CEO, as you're, figuring out this marketplace, and capital is, in terms of dilution and in terms of issuing shares, you guys have had some announcements in that regard. Talk about your philosophy there in terms of running the company and issuing shares.
Yeah, so, having the resources available to really undertake what we're doing is a critical component. I think that's one of the reasons, we've been successful as a listed business. We have I wouldn't call it unlimited path to liquidity as far as raising capital, but it's certainly a heck of a lot better than a private CBD company. And if you look at it, there's only, there's no other listed company. There's one other company which trades in Canada, and they have, an ability to raise capital. But for the most part, I think most of the CBD companies are hampered pretty significantly by their ability to raise capital. I think we've done a good job in raising capital. If you think about it, we started the company, or really took the brand public, in December of 18, and for the last 2.5 years have built this entire thing on under $30 million. That includes running a New York Stock Exchange listed company, which I can assure you is not cheap. And so I think we've been an incredible steward of the public's money. And I think right now we're in really good shape. We've got a very healthy balance sheet. We got over $25 million in cash. We have no debt. So we're not interested really or really don't have a need in raising any capital. We don't have any significant CapEx. Our burn, depending on which quarter you go to over the last 3 or 4 quarters, has been either zero or a little bit because, of our marketing tweaks that we take opportunistic, views on sometimes. But for the most part, I think we're in really good shape. We don't have any financing requirements. And, our goal is to be profitable by the end of the year. I think we can get there. And I think we'll have plenty of cash on our balance sheet, when we do get there. So I think we're in really good shape.
And in terms of investors, there's, talk, I know on Seeking Alpha about how many investors like the preferred option as opposed to the common stock option. Do you want to talk about that to investors about, there's an over 9% yield on that. What do you see that in terms of investors and looking at both sides of that?
Yeah, so one of the things that we did is we floated a Series A preferred share. It's like different strokes for different folks, right? We didn't want to dilute our common shareholders because we felt, and we still feel, our stock is very undervalued. But at the time, we felt it was extremely undervalued. So we floated a preferred share with a higher conversion price. The trade-off was that we paid a cash dividend every month for the preferred share. And, so depending on where you buy that preferred share, it's been trading, somewhere around kind of $8 to $9, 9 and change, I guess, over the last couple months. You're getting a cash yield of, 9 to 10%, which is incredibly attractive in today's environment. I mean, you put money in your bank, you get absolutely nothing. Obviously, there's a greater risk in our shares than cash sitting in a bank. But I think, on the risk profile, it's pretty good. And so, to your point, there are a lot of investors that say, hey, look, I want to get a yield every month. This is a great instrument because we believe in the long-term value of the company. And we basically, have an option to convert at $6, and so, but we're getting paid while we wait is kind of the concept. And so we've used that preferred, and it's been a great instrument for us.
And in terms of, you're talking about thinking of yourselves as either extremely undervalued or undervalued. And there's many in the marketplace who would agree with you. The share price along the lines of many in, cannabis and cannabis adjacent sector are feeling kind of the brunt of a lower share price right now for, you can point to a number of reasons. I'm not sure if there's one crystal clear reason, but there might be a few reasons why that's happening. But then there's also, if you listen to the earnings calls, there's not many analysts asking questions. I'm wondering why you don't think there's more interest, given, you guys are having record revenue growth. You're, number 1 or 2 in the field, all these numbers that you can point to, no debt. Why do you think that there's not more excitement, more interest around this stuff?
Well, look, I think, it's a question I ask myself every day, to be honest with you. We work pretty hard. I think we've done a really good job. If you look at our stock, it's performed extremely well, year to date, and certainly over the last, 6 to 9 months. I think I wish we had you mentioned the cannabis industry. Sometimes I always say we get the worst of the cannabis industry, but we don't get the best.
Right.
when things are going good. If you look at our multiples versus some of the, even the Canadian LPs that are out there trading at multiples of sales that are 5-6 times of where we are. I mean, there's one cannabis company up in Canada, I think it has $1 billion market cap. We did more revenue than they did last quarter, and we're at a 200 and some million dollar market cap. So look, I've been doing this a long time. I don't look at it from, a standpoint of every day to day. I think we've made a lot of progress telling the story and building on the story over the last, 6 months and 12 months. And I think really we're going to get the recognition. It might take another quarter or two of numbers coming out. We have some, I think, exciting things that we're going to be talking about corporately. And, it's going to be one day people are going to look down and they're going to, see a stock. I guess we're in the nearly $4 a range right now. And hopefully there'll be a zero on the end of it, and they'll say, gosh, I could have bought it at $4. Who knows? But we feel like we're creating value every day. Our pet brand, which, I don't think anybody talks about, our Paw brand, in 1 year with a very limited investment, we've grown that into a top 3 animal CBD brand in the country. And its sales are doing tremendous for us. So, it's gonna happen. We are gonna get our day in the sun, so to speak. And I think, all the investors that have invested down here, are gonna be hopefully very richly rewarded. That's our hope.
Talk a little bit about Paw CBD and the animal side of things, and how, a lot of people talk about how exciting specifically for animal CBD is. Talk a little bit about that. And also there's been some new entrants to the market, what you guys have already established in the marketplace and what you have coming up.
Well, the nice thing about launching Paw on the back of cbdMD is, you launched into a existing brand, right? And so one of the first things we did is we went out and studied our customers and asked them who owns pets. And we found out nearly 80% of them own pets, right? So if you own a pet, because I own 2 of them, you spend more on your pet than you do yourself sometimes. And, the great story I love to tell is when we first started a brand, I had a friend of mine who's a veterinarian, and he had just sold his veterinarian practices. And he said the last couple that he had was a 60-year-old couple. They came in with a 12-year-old German Shepherd to get his teeth cleaned. And the husband was missing a tooth and the wife was missing 2 teeth. But it was more important to get the 12-year-old German Shepherd's teeth cleaned. That gives you some idea of how passionate people are for their animals. So, we found that CBD, if it's packaged right, with other ingredients, is a great supplement for pets, particularly for dogs and cats, and our customers love it. I mean, I use it for my pets. I have 2 dogs. I think we formulated it really well. I think we have an incredible SKU count. And it's just a fun brand, Paw CBD. It's just a great, fun brand that's been selling very well online and is now really starting to get into stores. And we have a couple of groups that are hopefully going to give us a green light. And we think the wholesale side of the business and kind of the brick and mortar side of the business is really going to take off in the second half of this year with Paw. So it's exciting. It's a fun brand. The folks that run it for us are just really passionate people. But the good thing, as I said, we've been able to sort of lift it behind the entire cbdMD brand. So we didn't have to go out there and create marketing teams and social teams and sales teams. We already had all that in place. So we were able to do it incredibly cost effectively.
And, you talk about getting into the brick and mortar stores, and you guys have had a focus on e-commerce specifically and have been doing well on that side of things. Is that a post-COVID switch? Is that because of the regulations opening up? Or is that because of where the brand is at this point? You feel like there's more, there's going to be more presence, and the deals that it sounds like you may have upcoming have to do more with brick and mortar?
Well, it's funny, when the brand started originally, it was all 100% direct to consumer because that's Scott's background. And then when we took the brand public and we merged it in, we started to launch the brick and mortar side of it. And so we had to make a decision in early 2019. Did we try to push to the bigger boxes, or did we go to, the road less traveled, as I call it, which is going out to all the small retailers, the compound pharmacies, the vape shops, the small, grocery store chains, those kind of things. And, Scott and I both had experience that when you have a brand that's just emerging and you try to push into a bigger box and you don't have the marketing behind it, generally what happens is there's no sell-through. And when there's no sell-through, the big box guys say, well, here's your stuff back. And it's a very, very difficult thing to deal with. And so we decided we didn't want to get into that. We went the other way, and we set up a sales team and really started, doing the tough job of manning the telephones and calling everybody and saying, hey, here's our brand. Here's why you should carry it. Here's the marketing that we're going to do behind it. And we built up about 6,000 different doors that agreed to carry our brand. And so as you got into right before the pandemic, the size of the business had grown, but it had gone to about 55% direct to consumer and 45% retail. And obviously the pandemic hit. I think a lot of business went online, as you know, and we were able to pivot and really take advantage of that online to the point where, now we're at 75% online, 25% wholesale. Now, the wholesale business is almost back to pre-pandemic levels. I would say another quarter or so, we should be good. But what did happen is, thank God we didn't go the other route, because, the big boxes did just push it all back. And we saw a lot of competitors just get wiped out. And so we sidestepped that. And, we're glad we did. So, I think ultimately, when the big box guys do decide to come in, they're going to now go for the brands, as opposed to, I think, what they kind of made a mistake before, where they went into, a lot of off-name companies. They really didn't even have brands, but they were able to get, huge discounts, right? And a lot of these buyers at these big box places, that matters more. But unfortunately, when it doesn't sell through, nobody's a winner. And that was the case. So when the big box guys come back, and I think they will, they're going to come at the brands. We're, at the top of that list. So we think that's going to be a positive position that we're in.
Let me ask you, in terms of strategizing and talking about just that specific, factor that you were just talking about now in terms of selling direct to consumers, there has to be a lot of thoughtfulness before you can have a successful strategy. Do you feel like as you've evolved and grown, both in experience and in age, in terms of business to business and sector to sector, do you feel like it gets a little bit easier in terms of leaning on your own expertise and the expertise of those you've surrounded yourself with? Or do you feel like with each new thing comes its new challenge, and you hope that plays into it, but it doesn't necessarily make it easier?
Well, look, building a brand is very, very hard work, and it takes time, and it's expensive, and, you better have it's okay for your plan to evolve, but you better have a good plan to come out with, or you're never going to get any traction. And I think we did a good job, in our initial launch of the brand, and really focused around a lot of the athletic side of the business. We have one of the biggest rosters of athletes certainly of any CBD brand, and any cannabis brand for that matter. And so that got us out there. Now what we're trying to do is kind of expand, into different other channels. For instance, we'd like to try to expand into more of the female demographic, kind of over the age of 35. And that is because, statistics will show that a female over the age of 35 is certainly more brand loyal. Okay, kind of younger men tend to make quicker decisions, which is great when you're kind of starting a brand, but they also can move very quickly off the brand for a variety of different reasons. The flip side, as I said, is female over 35 are very brand loyal, but it takes a lot of work to get that customer. And so you have to do two things. You have to market to that customer, and then you have to create products that customer is really going to go after. So if you look at our commercials, you go to our website, cbdMD.com. We put the last couple sets of commercials. They're very set to that demographic. Number one. Number two is we just launched our cbdMD Botanicals line, which is our skin care and beauty line, which is focused towards that demographic as well. So, it's about expanding. It's about trying to learn who your customer is, what customers you don't have, and how do you get to those customers, right? And then also trying to figure out, brand loyalty is critical, right? One-time purchasing, is fine, but once you get that customer to purchase over and over and over, that's when, your numbers really start to hockey stick. And that's the challenge of any young brand, particularly in a new industry. And it's something that is, as far as a KPI that we look at, that's one of our top ones. So we're working hard to, to do that. And I think we've got a good strategy to do that.
And do you find that the same is true for the animal side of things, that the brand loyalty is once the pet adopts it, that there's a high brand loyalty there?
Well, I'd say once the pet owner adopts it, right? I mean,
right.
The pet owner is incredibly loyal. My wife, for instance, we still buy the same dog food, and we're on iteration number 3 as far as, I've been married 25 years. So, I mean, we're in first pets and second pets, now we're in the third pet, same dog food. So it's, it's a pretty good example of that. And so, yeah, I think, and again, but it takes time. It takes time to get that loyalty and because the need is there, it's just a question of getting that brand recognition, that brand loyalty, and that comes from a lot of different ways. And so, you got to have a holistic approach to that.
And what do you find in terms of, coming up the pike in terms of, I know you guys have had some recent product announcements, the innovation, or, you're talking about appealing to more of the female demographic. Does that include like the types of products and what they're, what they're focused on in terms of the approach? Or is it more about how the product is being released?
Well, I mean, look, we just announced 2 things. One was a line extension of our best-selling gummies, okay? So we listened to our customers, and our customers said, hey, could you make a gummy that has sleep or recover? And then I came up with the idea of apple cider vinegar because, I use that, and I find it that it's helpful for me. So we've launched, and we're coming out with the apple cider vinegar gummies, which I think is going to be hopefully a huge seller. But that was a line extension. The other thing we announced is our drink mixes. And that's something that we've been working on for a long time because, we're not manufacturing those. So we have to find a formulator that can do it and do it consistently and do it to our standards. And we found somebody, and we think we're happy with them. And we think the drink mix is hopefully going to be a huge seller for us, because everybody's looking for a way to kind of open up the pack and just drop it right in and mix it. And now you've got your, great flavor and CBD in your drink. And, it's just a very convenient, cost-effective way to do it and get our mix into your system. So we're very excited about that. And we always are thinking of new products. And I think, we're going to have hopefully some partnerships on some new products coming out the balance of this year. So, stay tuned. It'll be very interesting.
And speaking about, I think the drink thing is really exciting. And I think it seems to have been a question of just who's going to figure out the best way of putting it out into the marketplace. But once it's out there, I think there's going to be a pretty fast adoption. Do you feel like that goes hand in hand? You know, you have a lot of athletes on board as celebrity endorsers. Do you feel like the drink part is a big part of that? And also, you mentioned kind of, you know, emphasizing a lot on celebrity endorsements at the beginning. Is that something that you're stepping away from? Because I know that you still partner with a bunch of celebrity endorsers. Is that something that you're still focusing on?
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, our athletic brand ambassadors like Bubba Watson, we just announced 2 weeks ago, Patrick Reed, which is a huge find. As a matter of fact, my hats just came in. We call these the Patrick Reed cbdMD hats. They're really big, embroidered, and they look great and come in all kinds of different colors. And so we're excited about Patrick. We have some other brand sponsorships that are coming up. So no, we're not shying away from them. We're actually adding them, but we're adding ones that are, I think, even bigger in stature because they love the product and they use the product. And no, we're not. We're continuing full speed ahead on that.
Well, Marty, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I feel like you've given us a lot to think about in terms of the broader CBD marketplace, but also I feel like you've given us a lot of transparency about what's going on at cbdMD, and I appreciate you taking the time and sharing all your insights with us. If there's anything you want to leave viewers with, I'm happy for you to do so.
I would just say our ticker symbol's YCBD, right? That's the one thing that we can mention. No,
Mic drop.
I appreciate your time. Huh?
Mic drop.
Yeah, mic drop, right. Thank you so much for your time. To all your listeners, thanks for listening. I appreciate the interest in the company.